It is Bill Ricca.
Are we supposed to do the...
We can do the crack. You want to do the crack? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it just sounds like beer.
It does.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to hydration.
Yeah. I always expected to, crack open a Foster's with an Aussie, but I mean, water is just as manly.
Well, Foster's is not a thing in Australia. They haven't been there for... to be fair, I don't remember Foster's past like the age of 5.
Really?
So 25 years ago. Quick math. Yeah. Like Foster's...
Wait a minute. Give me a minute. No, I'm just kidding.
Cross the 2, carry the 1. No, but seriously, that's not a thing.
No?
It's just not a thing, but...
Like, because beer's not a thing or just Foster's?
Beer's a thing.
I was going to say.
Yeah, beer's a thing.
Yeah.
It's...
So what's the new Foster's?
There isn't one. Like there was VB, Victoria Bitter. That's now just considered piss. Like it's warm piss that gets you drunk. Then you've got Carlton Draft. They're like the two staples. They'd be like your Bud Light or Budweiser.
Yeah, because Bud's an import over there. So
yeah. Budweiser's like fancy. Everyone's like, we got Budweiser.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I imagine it'd be like Corona though. Corona.
Not coronavirus.
It's really just like Corona's really left a problem for me. Like it's given me some, I don't know, Stockholm syndrome or something. So Corona is apparently not like, they laugh at it in Mexico. It's like one of those things like, oh, you're a fucking foreigner.
Oh yeah,
which makes sense.
Yeah, just like Chinese food around here too. So
Chinese food here is worse than.
I meant in the U.S. in general. It's not Chinese. It's American.
Well, everything is.
Yeah.
Even your pizzas.
Pizza.
Try Italian pizza. Everyone like
different. Definitely different.
Americans. I laugh at Americans when they have proper pizza. They're like, I paid $20 for this, and you're like, I get where you're coming from, but quantity doesn't always mean it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, like, it's good. It's not. I mean, it's not authentic, but it's good. I mean, people like Taco Bell. That is not authentic Mexican food, but it's still good,
It's not even that. I got a cool. It is not good, dude. My father-in-law loves it, but it is trash. I'm gonna have to pull rank on you on that one. No quiero Taco Bell.
Oh, then you don't want my SpaghettiO argument.
It's like.
Because I do like SpaghettiOs too. I do not consider it Italian food, but
it's not. You're kind of right there. It's definitely not. But before we get into it, let's just introduce people so they know who you are.
Oh, sure.
What you do, and then I'll probably ask questions, or I won't, or we'll just shoot shit. There's no,
Yeah.
So
you're just going to edit all that stuff into the middle somewhere?
Nope. That's just starting from there.
All right,
starting from the crack, baby.
All right.
So you going to tell them?
Tell them what? Oh, who I am?
like, oh, shit.
Right. Well, my name is Bill Ricca. It's also the name of a town in Massachusetts. And you want me to go into like professional stuff?
Everything. Yeah. I mean, like you can tell them your shirt size.
Sure.
How detailed do you want to get?
Absolutely. I am the guy with the hat on. That's pretty much who I am. But I do health insurance. I take a little bit of a different approach to health insurance, and that's why people ask me what kind or whatever, and I tell them any help that they need I can provide one way or the other. So health insurance is just it's way more complicated than it. I don't want to say more complicated than it needs to be, but it is very complicated, and it's complicated enough that you don't need to add in like sales pitches and stuff. You're just looking for the best thing for you and your family. So that's what I help with.
Yeah. Health insurance here is it's a wild one. Coming from Australia in particular, where it's like most people don't have it because we've got the equivalent of. I mean, it's like an Obamacare that worked. I don't know too much about Obamacare, so like but Medicare in Australia, it's like I've never paid for an X-ray. I've never paid for a blood test.
Well.
But then when I got my visa,
you have just not at the counter.
Not directly. Oh, that was when I got my green card here. Like I had to do all the physicals, which it was like an X-ray. It's like, what are you X-raying for? Like if my bone is broken, like am I qualified to come in if I have a broken arm still? But I had to pay like $180, and I was like, excuse me, what? I'm like, oh, they're prepping me for America. This is not under the Medicare system.
Well, no, a lot of it, I mean, having a medical background. So a lot of people don't know that, you know, I was in the medical field for 23 years, you know. So, I mean, I saw patients and, you know, and a lot of people don't realize, they say, why do I need an x-ray if I'm not sick or if there's nothing going on? And that's what we call establishing a baseline, you know, so that when you are sick, I can tell how sick by comparing it to when you were healthy. You know, so I mean, it's helpful.
Yeah,
you know,
because I actually didn't even know you were in the medical stuff before now until literally yesterday when you were telling me a bunch of stories about what you used to do. Remind me again, 'cause like last night is a blur. Like, remind me what you
were you even drinking last night?
I was drinking water. I was so hydrated. I was drunk. No, but yeah, remind me because, like I said, my brain just.
Well, so my background is I joined the military right out of high school, and I was a combat medical specialist. So I started my medical career at 18.
Wow.
And then, you know, I did that for a while along with other things. I studied to be a respiratory therapist, a pediatric nurse. I ran a diagnostics lab. You know, so I did a lot of different things on the medical side. During that period, I also taught adult education. So I taught people how to do what I do. So, and I did that for many years as well. So, I mean, that's actually my calling is teaching, you know, and training.
Yeah.
Breaking information down into understandable bits. And my favorite part of my job is when somebody tells me, I've never had anybody explain it to me like this before. It makes perfect sense now.
Gotcha.
You know, that's my favorite part of the job.
Yeah.
You know,
because it definitely, like, the insurance industry for health in particular definitely has like a negative connotation where like a lot of hesitation with people. But I know one thing that that a lot of people do, I do hear indirectly, is they're like, I just feel exactly what you just said. Like, Bill explains it so that I understand. I'm confident versus still got a million questions, but I'm doing it because I quote unquote have to.
Right.
What are some of the things that you look out for when, say someone comes to you? Because again, this thing's super foreign to me. That was part of the deal with the in-laws. I was like, if you want me to move to America, you pay for my health insurance because I'm not used to that shit.
Right. Yep.
It was like my little barter. And thank you that they did. So thank you, in-laws. They really wanted Stacey back. But what are like some of the questions that really would help someone find the right policy for them?
Well, a lot of what I do. So let me backtrack a little bit. So there's a lot of people that are in sales, you know, and I find when you listen to enough people, we do a lot of networking. So of course we run into a lot of people that are in sales. And one of the commonalities that people profess is that their job is really, it's not sales, like sales is some dirty word, but they say, I educate my clients, you know, and while that sounds very altruistic and very not salesy, if you stop and listen to a lot of what they say, they're educating their client on why they should buy from them. And it's like, that's not an education. That's still a sales pitch.
The one way you probably shouldn't sell.
Right. Like, so like, that's what happens is, that's how they do it. Now me, what I do is, I have arranged my license and my portfolio so that I have the ability to give you information on anything that you need. So I tell people I offer everything so I don't have to sell anything, you know? And what I do is I explain, I basically handhold. For one thing, I check for misconceptions, right? A lot of people have the wrong conception, right? They misunderstand something because their neighbor said it was right. You know, it's like, no, that's not true.
They got a layman approach.
So I have to address those things first and get them out of the way. And then once they understand, from that point forward, they understand that most of what they think they understand is probably wrong or at least questionable. then that opens up the ability for me to basically show them everything, right? Here is everything that's out there. And then what I do is I ask questions and I say, is this something that's important to you? Because if it is, none of these things will work. And now we're looking at these things. Now that we've narrowed it down from several thousand to a couple of hundred, what about this? This is a common thing that's important to people. Is this important to you? If it is, these things are out. Now we're systematically, shopping for health insurance is not picking one plan from 1,000. It's systematically narrowing it down based on what you want, not what I want,
Yeah, that's a good point.
So a lot of misconceptions out there. People don't know. They don't know terminology, for one. They don't know the difference between a deductible and a maximum out of pocket.
I just learned that.
They don't know the difference between an HMO and a PPO.
What is the difference between an HMO and a PPO?
So a lot of what I get is, I tell people all the time, I say most people don't know the difference. The ones that are dangerous are the ones that think they know the difference, right? And the reason that they think they know the difference is because they see that HMOs are typically less expensive, but there's a reason for it.
And what does it stand for?
HMO stands for Health Maintenance Organization. PPO stands for Preferred Provider Organization. Doesn't matter. The letters don't matter. The terminology doesn't matter. When I look at a plan, if I'm evaluating a plan, I look at something very specific. Now, most people think, oh, well, with an HMO, it's cheaper because you have to get referrals to see specialists. But I don't mind doing that. That's true sometimes. But that's not that's not the difference. That's not even a very significant difference, A difference to me is something that's going to put you in danger. So what I tell people is, you have your max out of pocket, right? The maximum out of pocket. And God forbid something major happens to you and you're rushed to the hospital and that hospital accepts your insurance, then you're only going to be responsible for your maximum out of pocket, whether you have an HMO or PPO. They're going to function the same. The difference is, what happens if that exact same thing happens to you and you're rushed to the hospital and that hospital does not accept your insurance? With a PPO, there's a secondary set of benefits that kicks in. It still protects you. It's not as good as if they were in network, but it still protects you. It still has that catastrophic coverage. Whereas with an HMO, you just don't have coverage.
Got you. So there's a backup with PPO versus HMO. What's that secondary thing you're talking about? So just so I can wrap my head around it too, that secondary backup that you said PPO has. It's
a separate structure, a separate out of network plan that kicks in.
Okay. Gotcha.
So say you have a plan that's got an $8,000 maximum out of pocket, right? And you, God forbid, have a heart attack, you're going to easily run a couple of $100,000 in charges. And if you're rushed to that hospital and they take your insurance, then you're not going to owe $400,000 or $500,000. You're only going to owe $8,000, right?
Gotcha.
But if you have a heart attack and you're rushed to the hospital and that hospital does not take your insurance and you have a PPO, then you have a different maximum out of pocket. It's probably not $8,000. It's probably closer to $16,000, which is not as good, but it's certainly better than $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah.
So, and people are like, well, I'll just stay in my network. Okay. So when you schedule your heart attack, make sure that you're in a town that, or you're near a hospital that takes your insurance. That's unrealistic. Insurance is all about preparing for the unforeseen.
Yeah.
So, what if, say you look in town, you're like, okay, well, all the hospitals here are in network, so I can go with the HMO. That's all well and good. But then say you have a funeral, that you have to fly out to Ohio for the week, or, you're on vacation up in the mountains, or, you're just taking a long weekend on the other coast. I mean, there are places in town that don't take the HMOs, so you can't, the ambulance driver doesn't turn around and say, check his insurance card. Let's make sure we take him to an in-network provider. They don't do that. So
that'd be amazing if they did.
That's your peace of mind, and that peace of mind costs money.
Yeah.
So that's a common one. People don't know the difference between a deductible and a maximum out of pocket.
What's the difference?
So with a deductible, they think that they're the same thing. They think that they're the same thing. And the reason they think that is because your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance, they have your deductible, which is your max out of pocket. It's the same number, right? You have a $1,000 deductible on your car. That's how much you would owe before the plan takes over for the rest of it, right? they're reaching for the right concept, but they don't realize that with health insurance, there's two different numbers to reach, right? So your deductible is what you're responsible for before your plan starts paying.
Okay.
Right? So once it starts paying, it does so at a certain percentage. You're still paying, just less, until you've met this second threshold, which is your maximum out of pocket.
Gotcha.
So people don't realize they think that once they've met their deductible, they're done, and they're not. They've still got more to go, unless your deductible and your max out of pocket are the same number. Which
would be fantastic.
Well, some plans do that.
Gotcha.
So, but it's important to know that you need to know both terms.
Yeah. And health insurance as well, is it? Because one thing that's really unique for me is like how state to state everything seems to work.
Yep.
Is that similar here, where it's state to state? Like, I mean, you already mentioned that it can be even like local to not local,
right.
which is fucking wild.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, it's not like that. It's literally like
the whole country.
You got it. Like, if it happens on literally the other side, you're sweet.
Yeah.
Like my friend, I laughed, but it wasn't that funny. She traveled to South America, so got travel health insurance for South America. A few things fell through, and she's like, "Fuck it, I'm really close. I'm gonna fly up to Miami for 4 days." In that 4 days, she got appendicitis.
Wow.
And
well, appendicitis comes on quick. So
yeah, well, in that 4 days where she just dipped out, appendicitis, 25 grand, something like that. I don't know what it was. For Australia, we're like, what the fuck? Because appendicitis is under the free program across the board. Like, you pay Medicare, you've got it. So like all my friends, I'm like the only one I know of that hasn't had appendicitis. They've all just go in, patch up, see you later. And same as like broken bones. Like being a skateboarder when I was young, mate, living in Australia was great because it's like I busted my ankle, my arm multiple times. I've rolled ligaments. I go to hospital, chill out for a bit. They put me up, fix it. Then I have like 7 weeks of physiotherapy after that as well.
Right.
But I had health insurance, and this is one thing I know that like I don't even know what the solution is to get it close to Australia. But one of the pushbacks I always get is like, oh, that just means that the rich end up having to pay for the poor. It was like, yes, but no. Because in Australia, I had private health insurance. But I'd never tell them when I went to the doctors. Like, so if I went to the hospital, they'd be like, do you have private health insurance? I'm like, nah,
no,
going for free. Whereas if I did say I did, then
your plan would apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember my mum the whole time, like, I'd be calling her, like, hey, fucked my ankle again, mum. She's like, ugh. Just make sure, don't tell them you have with MBF. I'm like, got it.
Yeah.
That was the one piece of advice always. You don't have health insurance, Blake. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, health insurance is such a hot topic with people because it's a political topic. It polarizes people. And the thing is, just like any political opinion, they're both correct. They're just opposed. You know what I mean? Like, just in terms of health insurance, right? You can either have the government-sponsored health insurance, which is great to use on a day-to-day basis, right? You go into the hospital, you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
But it's not free, right? There's nothing that's free. People got to understand that the money comes from somewhere, right? So when you look at a country where they have that universal health care, people are touting, how wonderful it is, and there's pros and cons to everything, right? So yeah, it's great. It's easy to use, right? It's easy to use. It seems free, but you're paying way more in taxes to fund that. But
in Australia, we don't have the death tax America has, which is wild. You got, like, when I found that out, I'm like, wait. It costs you 30% of your wealth to die in America? That ain't a thing in Australia.
No.
Yeah. So during COVID, the narrative was like all these Americans are denouncing their residency in Australia because of Trump. It's like, I looked further into it. It was because they didn't want it. They're like, you know what? Shit's in the fan.
It's all money.
I'm 60. I'm not moving back to America. I'm on my way out. Like, I got, 10 to 30 years back. Like, why would I pay 30% to the government that I'm not even going back to?
Right.
That was why that's how I found out. I was like, wait, what? You got to, it costs you to die.
Yeah.
So, but over here with your, like, Obamacare, is it like a one or the other? where if say for example, if I had private health insurance, could I go in and be like, hey, can I just, like, I've broken my arm, can I just get patched up for free? Or does that go under my...
Well, no. So Obamacare is not... The Obamacare platform, the Obamacare is slang. So the Affordable Care Act platform.
Gotcha.
That's not universal health care.
Himself, did he?
So, kind of, yeah.
That's a bit arrogant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the current one's doing that too, so...
What, Biden care?
Biden care. There you go. It's very creative too.
What is it? Is it like something for retirement packages or something?
Trump did the same thing. I mean, I'm not playing favorites. You know what I mean? Like, he did the same thing.
They all do it. It's so funny watching them be like...
It's all about legacy. It's all about legacy.
But it's like, anyone who thinks that the president has the power to control the economy.
Right.
Like, I remember... like, a lot of, because I married into a very Republican family, and so me coming from, like, I didn't realize how left Australia was, and then once I got out of it, I'm like, oh, that's a problem. Like, you need balance, you need yin and yang.
Sure.
But their whole thing was the economy's never been better with Trump, and I go, okay, first of all, let's just look at, like, because under Obama came in, and I don't care about any of them. There's not like a political view. It's just Obama was voted in right during the 2008 like crash,
right?
And so obviously everyone blames him for that. I'm like, I had one person literally go like, can you explain to me then why 3 months into him being president the economy crashed? I'm like, you think that one man crashed the whole world? And they're
in
like,
3 months.
Yeah, they're like, I'm just saying it's a coincidence. I'm like, exactly, it's a coincidence.
The word exists for a reason.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, so Trump's thing is like, the economy's never been stronger. It's like, well, it has if you go before 2008. But if you're looking at it like, he's just he's gotten on the wave at the end of 8 years of Obama, who, again, I don't even think he had an impact in it. It was just the economy went the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And then it was so funny during 2020 and like during the election, the left is saying Trump's responsible for fucking up the economy, and the right's like, as if he had an effect. I'm like, he had an effect up until the corona, apparently. And then as soon as Biden gets in, everyone's like, is blaming Biden, like Biden's the problem on the right. And the left is like, it's Trump's fault. I'm like, dude.
Yeah,
whatever. You shut the whole country down. What did you expect to happen?
Whatever your narrative is, you can find pseudo evidence to support it. That's just,
It's so
that's why I don't even like. It amazes me that people, for one thing, they watch the news at all as though it's real, and then secondly, they get fired up about it. I've never seen anybody get as fired up about news as I have in the last few years. It's ridiculous.
The only part I got fired up about was the systematic eradication of rights based on a vaccine that didn't really prove to help itself. Like, that was my only thing that I got fired up with, because I'm like, hold on, you're telling me that I have to take this thing in my body that doesn't stop spread. If it stops spread, I'd be like, fuck yeah, that makes sense.
Well, you sign up for it by choice.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd still have a problem with it being forced on me.
Yeah.
But
the whole, and this is the thing with, like, again, like our crazy biases. It's like you got the group that's all about my body, my choice. Their leader gets in, and all of a sudden it's fuck your freedoms. But then you got the group that's like, no, that's you can't take an abortion. Going, hey, fuck you, my body, my choice. It's like, wait. Well,
when does the argument apply?
Yeah, please, some consistency.
Exactly.
So anyway. Back to the Obamacare / Biden care / Trump care.
The Affordable Care Act legislation, that platform, that's not...
so wordy, though.
It is. Well, it has to be.
Why, affordable... Why can't they just say Medicare?
Because it's not Medicare. It's a different program.
You got Medicare as well? Why?
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
Yeah. Medicare is what people 65 or older at the moment, 65 or older, or disability, through the government and stuff. But the under 65 market, it's, there's group coverage, which is through an employer. There's the individual market, which is, one of the many types of coverage is the Affordable Care Act stuff. Now that was a very, it was groundbreaking in that it created an institution. I tell people it's a bell that can't be unrung. You know what I mean? Because prior to that, it was a very competitive market. But once they instituted something that had to guarantee coverage for pre-existing conditions, for example, that changed the entire landscape. You know, because when you just if you have an insurance plan that says we will automatically from day one pay for the stuff that you already have that's very expensive. Well, yeah, as a business person, I understand that, right? I would offer that too, but I would certainly charge a lot for it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one that's at risk, and people don't quite understand that. And that's why it's so expensive. You know, unless you're on the low end of the income spectrum, in which case you qualify for a government program that will assist you with your premiums.
Yeah.
You know, so I evaluate that stuff. When somebody sits down, I say, what does your health history look like? Because if you have pre-existing conditions, then that automatically takes all of this private stuff off the market because it doesn't cover pre-existing conditions, you know? So why am I going to look at that and put you at risk? And we're only going to look at this. Now, you know, this is all that's left that's going to cover your pre-existing conditions that you definitely want covered.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about the cost, right? It covers pre-existing conditions for you because it does it for everybody. So that's what makes it expensive. But what does your income look like? Because if your income is low enough, that's why they call it the Affordable Care Act, because then you may be able for some assistance.
So you can only get it if you have a certain income as well?
No, you can get it all the time. It's just whether or not you qualify for the assistance.
Okay.
You know, so it's two different things, and people, that's another misconception, is they think it's all one thing. The plans are over here that you can get as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, meaning, you know, during the open enrollment period, you can enroll in it no problem. Outside of that, you have to have a qualified life event to do it, but as long as you do, whatever, anybody can have it. It's just a matter of how much is it going to cost, because its raw cost is super expensive. So we look at those, and then we look at, do you qualify for the program that will reduce your premiums based on your income? But it's two different things that we do.
Gotcha.
So
there's really a lot of layers to this.
There is. And that's why it amazes me. It absolutely amazes me that the government put the Affordable Care Act stuff in place and allowed the average person to sign up on their own.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's to me so dangerous. You know what I mean? And then you see people like on social media and stuff, when someone's asking for recommendations or help, you get all these comments that say, don't bother with an agent, you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can do my own taxes too, but
that's the
technically, you know what I mean? Why on earth would I do that?
That's the example I always use. Back when I was 21, I've already said this in the podcast, so I'll keep it quick. My girlfriend at the time when I was 21, her and I earned the same amount on paper. We worked at the same place. She did it herself. I was like, dude, pay $150, $200, use this guy or girl, sorry. And she's like, no, fuck that, I'll do it myself. She gets back her money. She gets back $560 or whatever it was, around that number. And she's like, yes, that's amazing. I go, fantastic. She goes, what'd you get back? I'm like, $5,500.
Right.
Aren't you glad you saved that money?
And
now?
I paid my tax person, you know, even if you paid him $1,000, you're still $3,500 up from what they are, because you had a professional look at it.
100%.
You know, I look at the same thing as changing my oil. You know? I mean, changing your oil is not hard. It's a pain in the butt. I will pay someone else to do it. It's not that expensive. No. And they're better at it. You know what I mean? So
you may as well, like, I don't know. It's same as accounting, same as anything. You should just be outsourcing it. I don't understand why people are so against it. Yeah. Like, I've said this again, I'll keep it quick, but I also outsource. Like, I get people to drive to my house now where I, like, my haircut. Delivery for food. I'm like, why the fuck? Like,
if it's possible, why not?
At the price of an extra $20 a week, I save 3 hours, 4 hours a week.
And people don't understand convenience costs money.
Yeah.
you know, it's just whether or not it's worth it to you. You know, that's why when I do what I do, you know, I lay out all the options, and I say, this plan is going to do way more for you but it's more expensive. This plan's going to do a lot less for you, but it's way less expensive. And then, of course, there's several gradations in the middle, but you can't look at all of them at once. You have to just take two, right? These two. Here's the difference in price. What's the difference in coverage?
Yeah.
Here's the difference.
Make sure you get really close to the mic.
So,
Sorry,
am I not?
I keep just make love to it.
All right. It just seems so obscene. But why do they got to make it this shape?
Could you imagine if it was like just like if a thing goes around your face? That's even worse.
Can't they do that?
They'd be like, wow, that just looks like the other area of the human body from the other gender. Or sex. I don't know. What gender, sex? Which one is it?
It's both.
Okay.
But when you look at just two side by side, I say, okay, here's the difference in cost, here's the difference in coverage. Is that difference in coverage worth spending that, or is that difference in coverage worth saving that? That's up to you, not me.
Yeah.
You know, I always say it's not my risk to take and it's not my money to spend. My job is just to tell you what it is and what it costs.
It's funny as well, like when people talk to me about health, to go on the health route, when people talk to me about how expensive it is to be healthy, I'm like, who are you fucking kidding? Like, I have, my only pre-existing condition would be like asthma, but it doesn't really exist anymore because I got so healthy that it just...
Grew out of it too, probably.
I think it was a combination of that. Like, I still get it sometimes, but my mom, like, bless her soul, because it was like, oh, you have asthma, you're doing swimming. And she made it a hard line that you can't quit swimming until you're 16, then you have a choice. And because of like, it forces you to breathe, you know, you use your lungs because you're underwater a lot more. That helped huge. Where it was no, like I used to have huge asthma attacks as a kid.
Really?
Massive. I don't think I was ever hospitalized, but I did go to the hospital, if that makes sense. Like, like I had to go, but I wasn't there.
You weren't admitted.
Yes. Yeah. But like fitness, it's like, all right, cool. So my meal, I mean, I eat, the most expensive thing I probably eat is a steak. It's like $13, even with the crazy prices right now. I mean,
you're not getting your steaks at the right place.
Well, they're grass fed. Then again, I go layers to layers, but like grass fed, $13 for like 6 to 10 ounces, because I want to make sure it's the right stuff. But then it's like, again, someone does my insurance. They're like, what existing health things you have? I'm like, nothing. Like I got a thorough blood test. I was like smack bang in the middle for everything. I was like, fuck yeah.
Well, but see that, and that's great, because what that does is that technically that opens up options for you. You know, like let's say that you were somebody who, you know, your income is such that you're not really eligible for any kind of significant assistance on a premium.
Yep.
Right. Well, you could look at the Affordable Care Act plans, which are designed for people with pre-existing conditions, and you say, well, I don't have any. Then the only reason to have this plan is because you enjoy wasting money, you know, because you're getting coverage you don't need.
Yeah.
You know, whereas you know, if I could put you on this plan over here that's less expensive, usually pretty significantly less expensive, but the drawback to it is you have to be healthy enough to qualify for it. Or the drawback to it is it doesn't cover pre-existing conditions. In either case, that's okay with you. You know, every option out there has advantages and disadvantages. The trick to shopping for health insurance is to shop based on the disadvantages, because you want to find the plan whose disadvantages matter the least to you. You know, if you were a single middle-aged man looking for health insurance, you know, do you need to spend more money on a plan that has maternity benefits? Or, you know what I mean? So yeah, is it a disadvantage? Yeah, not for you, you know? So that's where I come in, is I'm the one that explains what the disadvantages are so that you can decide for yourself what you're willing to risk, right? If it's an easy risk. You're a middle-aged man, a single middle-aged man. Yeah. It's an easy risk to take that you're probably not gonna get pregnant. So
fingers crossed.
You know? So that's what I do. My job is literally just to understand what the risks are so that I can explain them to you and leave the decision up to you.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny, like, do you ever tell people like, hey, you might be able to save money in the next 2 years if you like get healthier? I'd be so tempted to be like, I mean, from a personal trainer background, I'm like, even when you look at like the money, like you got health insurance, you've got I mean, you stop smoking, you stop drinking alcohol, like the money.
I mean, I'm not rude about it, but
I am. Only if they complain. My thing is, if someone's complaining about something that they have the ability to change, I give the advice once, and then it's like, then I become rude.
I quoted somebody this morning whose plans were significantly more expensive because they're tobacco users. You know, I didn't make them tobacco users. They chose that.
Yeah.
They put they're a higher risk to insure than someone who's not. That's why their plans are more expensive.
And I'm okay with it if they're not complaining. That's my biggest thing. Like, I don't care if someone is super unhealthy, whatever it is, I'll be like, hey, just a heads up, this might be a problem later. But for now, cool, whatever. Just, I'm not going to be there for you when you complain about this outcome. You know, like, I'm like a bit of a dick.
I think that happens a lot though, just in general, like people are very money conscious, as they should be. I mean, of course. You know, they want the most for the least. You see it in recommendations on social media all the time. I want a good person to do my fence that's cheap.
Yeah.
And can get it done tomorrow. And it's
like, you very good.
Right. You want quality, you want speed, and you want affordability. You can't have all of those. You just can't. You can have two of those three things.
I want someone who doesn't have any work, who's cheap
and excellent.
Great.
You can't have that. You know, so what do? When they're approached by that, they go with the one that's cheaper because they're saving money.
Yeah.
And then
you never save money long term.
But then they complain that they're sacrificing quality or they're sacrificing speed.
Yeah.
You know, because what they opted for was to save money. And there's no shame in saving money, you know?
As long as you know what you're buying.
Exactly. Have the proper expectations, that's all.
Yeah.
You know?
Is there like a policy? Because one thing that'd be really cool, like the biggest thing I think that sets people back is like accidents, like broken bones, torn ligaments, stuff like that. That's what, for me, I believe that like if that stuff could be a communal thing where it's like accidents such as that, like you fuck up your ankle, you screw up, you fall over and break an arm. That's part of like a nationwide. Everyone puts in the pot. There we go. That, for me, I think would push... It'd put so many more people on the front end to get actually, like, if you're not spending that much money, like if you're already doing it tough and you've freaking fallen down the stairs, busted an arm, now you have to part with a bunch of money. That makes you weaker in terms of you can't get out of that rut, or at least become a bit stronger. Is there something like that currently in America? Awesome.
Yep. You just described a health share plan.
Oh, health share plan.
Which is not technically health insurance. But health insurance has evolved, or health share plans have evolved over time. So we're in Southwest Florida. There's HOAs all over the place, right? Homeowners associations, right? And how does an HOA work, right? All of the members pay monthly dues, right? They put money in a pot and there's a treasurer that keeps that, you know, that account going. And then should something happen that's covered by the HOA, right? Like, you get a broken fence, or you got to replace a roof tile or something like that, right? What you do is you get a contractor out, you come and they'll take care of it. They fix it. They submit the invoice to the organization, and the organization, if it's a qualified expense, they will reimburse you some or all of the amount, right? And that's works great as a homeowners association structure, right? Health share plans do that for healthcare, but the problem with it is people don't view their healthcare the same way that they view their community care, right? So back in the day, that's what they did, right? They just said, okay, well, we'll have this health share plan, and everybody contributes so much per month, and then should you have a medical expense, it will come out of this pot.
Yep.
Right?
And that was nationwide, or was that like it was optional?
I mean, it was still a private company that would do it. There's several companies, and they still exist, but what happens is everybody's like, okay, well, so I pay whatever $100 a month. Great. now that I have health care, I'm going to go and I'm going to get this done and I'm going to get this done and I'm going to get this checked. And it all caps out. Like you've spent more money on healthcare than you've spent on this plan. So it depletes that pot, right? So especially when everybody's doing that, because people feel when it comes to healthcare, when they're spending so much money on a monthly basis, they are entitled.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you think about it from an HOA standpoint, right? Like you don't pay your monthly HOA dues and then be like, okay, now that I've paid, I'm gonna get a new roof. I'm gonna get my door painted. They don't do that. They don't feel obligated to use it.
Yeah.
It's there for when they need it. With health share plans, people have had that feeling of obligation to use it, and then everybody does it. It depletes the pot. So what the health share plans did to combat that was they said, okay, well, you know, they instituted an obstruction, you know, so they say, okay, moving forward, look, we're going to replenish our pot, but then, you know, you can't use this money for something that you already had prior to joining up with us. So you can't use it for pre-existing conditions, right? So then people would, you know, they would not use the money as quickly, but they'd still deplete it because they're trying to use it other ways and get their money's worth. So then they would have to institute another and another and another, and those are called limitations and exclusions. To the point now where here we are, you know, decades later, you know, the big draw to a health share plan is the concept like you just described, and the fact that it's less expensive, sure, but the reason it's less expensive is because it's got 20 to 30 pages of limitations and exclusions and exceptions and basically reasons to not pay for something, you know, and that's all well and good. Like I understand how that works, but the problem is nowadays, and this is why I typically don't recommend health share plans. It's not because they're bad. There's no such thing as a bad plan. They all do what they're supposed to do. The problem is anytime you've ever heard anybody complain about health insurance, right? They always have the same complaint. You know, it doesn't cover anything. That's like nails on a chalkboard for me because there's no such thing as a plan that doesn't cover anything. Yeah. Right? It does what it does, you know? What they're actually saying is it didn't cover what I expected it to cover in the way that I expected it to cover it. So that's not a problem with the plan. That's a problem with your expectations, which are set by the agent, not by the policy, right? You bought this plan because of how I told you it was going to work, you know? So if I put you on a plan that doesn't cover pre-existing conditions and you say, that's fine, I understand. And then 6 months later, you go to the hospital for that pre-existing condition and the plan doesn't cover it, it sucks. But you're not surprised because I did my job and I set the proper expectation, right? You're going to call me up and say, hey, my herniated discs weren't covered. What's up with that? And I say, they were pre-existing. Remember, you chose the cheaper plan because it doesn't cover pre-existing. And you say, okay, makes sense. Yeah. But the thing is, with the health share plans, there's so many limitations and exclusions that really don't make sense all the time. Really? That when you go to use it 6 months from now and it gets declined, it's not immediately obvious why. You know, and then you're going to call me mad, you know, and then I have to be like, okay, Blake, look, remember here on page 17, left side, third paragraph down, right here in the 3 font, it says it's not going to do it under these circumstances, which unfortunately you have. Yeah. That's not going to make you feel any better about it. Nah. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to be like, oh, okay. Yeah. You know, so that's why it's just, I don't work with them because it's really hard to set the proper expectations.
Because it'd really be great if it was just something.
If people used it properly.
If
people used it properly. People abuse it. That's what it is.
But if it's something just so simple, like if you have an accident, like you get the occasional person that's committed to like, you know what, I'm going to fall down the stairs and break my leg. Right. Like, again, if if the policy just covers that, not like income after and all that sort of stuff, no one's going to do that. Like, well, because there's no incentive. Like, well, I really want to break my leg. I've heard it's blast. Like,
well, right, and that's the thing. When they try to look at like a health share plan, like you were describing, they have to incorporate all this other stuff too. Another thing that's an option for the concern that you're expressing is something called supplemental accident insurance. You know, so it's an add-on. You can get it by itself. Yeah. You know, but what it is it's a predetermined, like you have a predetermined monthly payment, and what you're paying for is at any given time, if I have an accident or an injury, you guys will pay up to this much. So typically you're looking at, I don't know. I mean, anywhere from like, we'll say 30 to $100, depending on the varying amounts and stuff like that. But you're paying a handful. Like Aflac is a good example. You pay so much money per month.
I've got a great story about Aflac.
And then God forbid, hopefully it doesn't happen, but God forbid it does. Then you are going to be reimbursed this preset amount. The system is really easy, and it limits the exposure that the insurance company has, right? Because they're not going to owe you more than what they predetermined.
Yeah.
So they don't have to have a lot of exclusions. So
Aflac. I was in an elevator. I can't remember if I've said this already on the podcast. I was in Nashville 2019, and I get in the like, one thing about being Aussie is great. I can just play the ignorant card so easily to get out of jail. I was in this huge hotel in Nashville. Like this thing, it was so big that I was like, I started planning how I would get there in the event of a zombie apocalypse, because I'm like, this is a city.
Sure.
And I can block off 5 doors.
That's a realistic concern.
It was realistic, like where I'd, because it had everything. You couldn't easily get in, and it had like 5 rivers. It was like 1,000 rooms, but it's all indoors with just a few entry points.
Wow.
And I was like, it even had a water park.
Yeah.
I was like, this is perfect.
Where was this?
In Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So perfect for a zombie apocalypse. Like,
Sure.
I was planning it all out.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
this
I'll
is
block
where
that
I'm going to go
100%.
when coronavirus goes wild.
Zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Yeah. Very similar. I did actually, this is bad. I'll kind of come back to that, but when coronavirus first hit and everything was locked down, everything was chaotic, where I did feel like, oh shit, society's gone. I remember I'm just eating dinner with Stace once. Just, quiet. It was like nice dim lit lights, because I was like, we do that at night.
Right.
And I just, not even changing how I was speaking. I'm like, I could kill someone if we have to, babe.
Just normal dinner conversation, right? Fill in the gap.
I literally and she turns to me, she's like, great, fantastic. Good to know. So those were the thoughts went through in March 2020.
What I think is funny is, and there's a lot of jokes about, with the gas prices the way that they are, they're making jokes calling back to 2 years ago, and they say, if we all just stop driving for 2 weeks, we can flatten the curve. And like, it's funny, but then I thought about it and I was like, man, that was like a thing. Remember? Like they said, hey, we'll just give it, be 2 weeks indoors.
Yeah.
Everybody locked down for 2 weeks. It's all it'll take, flatten the curve. And here we are
2.5 years later.
2 years later, people are still whining about it. And,
yeah. But yeah, so this Nashville place, it was so big. And I get into the elevator, and everyone has these lanyards in the elevator. And I'm just like, cool. Aflac. What's that?
Oh, okay. They were there for like a conference or something.
Something like that. And I go, oh, cool. Oh, sorry, no. I'll go, you guys here for a conference? And they're like, yeah. I go, oh, cool. What do you guys do? They go, oh, we're with Aflac. I'm like, oh, cool. What's that? They all look at each other like, this fucking idiot.
How do you not know?
Yeah. And like, I go to him, like, and he goes, oh, it's health insurance or whatever it was. And I go, I feel like I just asked what Google was. And they all just like, yeah.
But see, now that speaks to the power of marketing, right? Like, these people work for Aflac probably because they've got a job at Aflac because they saw an ad for Aflac and they like the product. But
I mean, like, ignorant Aussie who's never been
right. Aflac is a huge company that has obviously spent, a ton of money on marketing so that everybody in every elevator at every resort hotel knows what it is, whether they have it or not. But and then you get some Aussie coming in that's like.
But it's funny because like people like immediately when I had that thing, I was like, do you know I've had Americans ask me if we have Google. Like, I'm not even lying because I just said that statement before. Literally, my friend who had a motocross team, one of his riders came to Australia and his girlfriend goes, oh, that's neat. You guys have Google here too. We're like, yeah. But
Yeah, we're high tech around here.
But even Stay said that to me once when we first started dating. She goes, "Oh, do you have Udemy here?" And I'm like, "Udemy?" I'm like, "No, haven't heard of that." And she's like, "Ah, you probably don't have it here then." I go, "First question, is it on the internet?"
Then we have it.
Yeah, she goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Then we probably have it. I just haven't heard of it."
I just haven't heard of
And,
it. Maybe
like,
you should ask that instead.
she would use me like a beacon. Like, if Blake doesn't know that is representative of the entire 24.5 million people in Australia.
Sure.
She'd be like, "Blake knows about it," or "Blake doesn't know about it, therefore it's not in this country."
Because you're the only one I know.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's why.
But then the next friend she asked, he's just like, "Yeah, Udemy. I fucking use it all the time." And she's like, "Oh, you do get it here." I'm like, "Yeah."
You get it here. Like,
It's a fucking internet.
It can't reach.
Yeah, it's just too far. It can't go around the bend of the earth.
I don't know. I mean, I am definitely, like, there's a lot of people that come to the States with preconceived notions of American ignorance, and then they prejudice themselves. So they're automatically not assimilating into the culture.
Yeah.
With that attitude. And I dislike that. But I cannot argue that there is some basic American ignorance that happens, myself included. Like I think I told you this story. Like, I mean, I've had several accidental, can I say accidental racism without being, I don't know. It's
we're all there. I see a white guy and I'm like, oh,
and that's why I preface it. Right. That's why I preface it with accidental, because it's not like me, but like for example, I think I told you this story about I used to teach, and we used to the instructors had to follow up on all the attendance issues. So I used to tell my students, look, if you're gonna be absent, just tell me so that I don't have to waste time calling you. I already know you're gonna be absent. That's all. And so they respected that. And I had one student come up to me and said, "Bill, I'm going to be gone for 3 days because my family is having a huge family reunion back in Mexico. We're going to be in Mexico City for 3 days." So, and as he's telling me this, like my eyes started trailing off, and he's like, "What's the problem?" And he looks at me, he goes, and he immediately, because he's known me for a while at this point, he's like, you think it's all like burros and sombreros and cactuses and desert, right? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. And he goes,
just mariachi bands
right,
everywhere.
exactly. And he goes, "Bill, it's not the Three Amigos." And I'm like, well,
it sounded fun though.
Right. And the thing is, like, everything in my head, I'm like, well, then why did they put that in the Three Amigos? Because that was a good movie. And he's like, "Bill, it's Mexico City. It is the largest metropolitan area, or the largest city in the world." And I'm like, I don't think so.
And is it really racist when you're like, what, that sounds fun?
Right. I wasn't saying anything bad about it. It's just, that's what my preconceived notion of all of Mexico, right? Because of Bugs Bunny, right? Like,
yeah,
Speedy Gonzales, that's what it looks like, And that's horrible to say, and I'm so embarrassed to say that, but
at what point, like, everyone thinks of Australia, they don't think of a city.
Right.
You know what
Everybody
I mean?
there dresses like Crocodile Dundee, and
and
that's what they do.
And we hypnotize water buffalo.
Exactly. That's what everybody does, right?
Yeah.
No wonder you barely get Google.
Yeah. But look, I think though America is very, like, closed off. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of the world sees America because America's like America harnessed the media. Like entertainment,
sure.
They permeated culture through the whole world. So a lot of the world sees America way more than America sees the world.
Exactly.
So, because I remember when we were trying to get the visa, like my green card visa to move here, the in-laws were just like, "You're making it too complicated." I'm like, "It is complicated." They're like, "No, just fly over here. Like, there's plenty of illegal people here." And I go, "Cool, name one with a good life."
Right.
I'm like, I agree, I could illegally move over there.
Sure. Just because I can doesn't mean I should.
But just so you know, I can never leave. Like,
Right.
I can't visit my family.
Right.
And they're,
who aren't coming with me, by the way.
I tell you that. But again, that was just another example of what they saw versus what the reality is. Because I knew how complicated it was because in Sydney, there is so many people getting visas to move to Australia, from marriage through to relationship to the work. I've seen it like my entire 20s. So I warned the States, I'm like, hey, we have to do this, this, and this. And it still was way harder than I thought anyway. Because I'm like, it takes about a year to 2 years to process. She's like, nah. I'm like, yeah.
Because lots of people want to do it.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people want to do the processing of it. So
it's wild. Well, Australia, America is way quicker than Australia.
Really?
Yeah. So during COVID, we actually timed it luckily.
Is it because you guys don't get the internet there?
Yeah, we go paper. Yeah, it's all mail. We have the postie come past. There you go, mate. Drop that off the embassy. Cheers. But when COVID hit, Trump stopped all visas except for marriage visas because he was like, well, why would we, everything's shutting down. Why would we get more people in from other countries when there's fucking no jobs here for Americans?
Right.
Except for the very one that I needed, which was fantastic. So it took, I think, 4 months instead of 12.
Wow. That is quick.
Yeah. So that was lucky. And then Australia ended up, it's just like you process it. Then she could stay in Australia, but couldn't leave. Then 12 months after, give or take, it was like the next probation period. And then 12 months after that, it's like another probation period, but then you have 28 days to enter the country.
Right.
So we're trying to play that cat and mouse game right now because we're not vaccinated, but Australia's still got this thing where you have to be vaccinated to enter the country easily and have a negative. This is where it's weird. To enter, now they've loosened it where you can, if you're vaccinated and have a negative test, you can just go in willy-nilly, fine, whatever.
But what kind of test?
Like a PCR, which, people say they're flawed anyway.
Well, but there's the PCR or there's the reagent tests. The reagent tests are the quick ones.
I don't think it's that one. I think it's the
PCRs are the ones that you have to run through a lab.
I think it's those ones. Yeah. So if you're vaccinated, negative, you can come in willy-nilly, fine, whatever. If you're unvaccinated, but still negative, 2 weeks quarantine.
Wow.
How
do they enforce that?
It's the government. I think.
Well, I don't know.
It's not like it's a house quarantine. I think you go to a hotel, which is basically just a 5-star prison cell.
Right.
And because it is people went fucking mad because they're in these, you can't leave the hotel room and the windows don't open because of regulations.
You don't want COVID to get out.
Well, hotels have all these regulations to stop people jumping out windows.
Well, yeah, that's true.
That too.
That's true.
So yeah, people were having mental breakdowns about day 5 because 14 days, you say 3 days, it sucks, but whatever. But day 5, Day 5, it hits you
on my head.
Huh?
It's pressing down on my head. Jeez, that's heavy.
It's the hat.
That's probably what it is. But I can't take it off. Nobody would recognize me.
Who's that guy? Is it Smashing Pumpkins?
Sorry, go ahead. Hotel regulations. Go.
People just every person, or mostly females that I heard. I'm sure it happened across a lot of males too, but most people I knew were female, would have a mental breakdown day 5 because it's all right, I can sit this out. But then day 5, you realize, fuck, I'm a third through. And then you can't leave. And then there's signs going, you can't exercise, you can't do all this shit. Anything health related, you're not allowed to do in this health pandemic.
Just lay here.
Pretty much.
Lay in your bed.
Yeah. Well, did you see, do you know UFC at all? You know Stylebender?
No.
He's a New Zealand fighter. He went back during COVID, and New Zealand went crazy lockdowns, absolute crazy lockdowns.
Crazier than Australia?
Yeah.
Because Australia went pretty crazy too.
Crazy.
I say crazy. I caught that. You can edit that out, right?
Nope, keep it in. New Zealand named and shamed one girl who was early 20s, maybe late teens, who didn't quarantine. Named, shamed publicly, everything, and then shut down the entire city with one case. One case. And so I remember him talking about, because he was super public with, he had to do quarantine when he got back. and he was showing the signs, no exercise permitted, all these stupid things. He ended up somehow, him and his mate smuggled in workout equipment, pushed the beds to the side, and created a little UFC training thing in their thing.
In the
So
hotel
these guys
room?
were like wrestling in the hotel. And he then was speaking about one thing, which was there was a lady in a wheelchair and they couldn't get her up the step. So this guy in a room next door looks out, sees no one, quickly runs out, helps her, runs back in. He gets slammed with an extra 2 days quarantine.
Wow.
He's like, and Stylebender nails it. He goes, that isn't science.
No.
That's punishment.
Yeah.
Like a school or prison system.
Right.
And he was really blasting New Zealand over it because he's like, this is just beyond ridiculousness now. Because if it was based on science, you'd just be like, all right, well, let's just keep testing these 3 people to see
If
for the
it
next
makes
few
a
days.
difference.
And they test you like, I think every 2 days.
Really?
So every 2 days, they'd be testing you while in quarantine to see if you get COVID. Can't you just wait until someone gets a fever?
Well, see, that's the thing. You'll test positive before you get a fever, possibly.
But then they weren't doing anything like monoclonal antibodies or anything to stop it.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's like you're
why,
testing.
I mean, like I said, I have a background in medicine, right? This is all very similar to flu.
Yes.
You know,
a lot of similarities.
and when flu season would come around, right? Obviously, we started doing flu testing, right? But the thing is, what would happen was somebody would come in with symptoms. We would evaluate the symptoms, and then we would test them for influenza. And then if they were negative, we would say, okay, follow this treatment regimen, and you should get better in this many days. If they were positive, we would say, okay, let me prescribe this, follow this treatment regimen, and you'll get better in this many days. You know, so the test, the result of the test, influenced the treatment. But that was never the case here.
Yeah.
That was never the case here. So, it's like I got sick a couple of months ago, and I'm the type of person, I get sick like once every decade. Like it's just not that often. But I got sick enough that I couldn't work that day. And somebody called, or several people, reached out to me for various things, and in the course of conversation, found out that I wasn't feeling well. And every single one of them, did you get tested? And I'm like, why?
Yeah,
And they
it
said,
doesn't change
so
anything.
you can see if you have it. And I'm like, well, the treatment's going to be the same whether it's positive or negative. So why bother?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand, Why test if the result is not going to influence the treatment? Who cares?
The only reason I was testing, so when I got it, I bought 10 rapid tests because I wanted to. I became my own science experiment because I went and got monoclonal antibodies and I wanted to see how quick I got rid of it.
Okay.
So I was testing myself every single day.
But the thing is, you were testing out of curiosity. Like that's
Pretty much.
If the result is not going to influence the treatment,
No.
the only reason to test is to satisfy curiosity. I was not curious. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was sick. That's all. I
Yeah.
don't care what you want to name it. It was sick.
But I was negative in 4 days.
Really?
Yeah. So I got Saturday night, had a fever when I got back from West Virginia.
From 4 days from when you tested positive? Okay.
Yeah. So I was negative. I had a fever, like a mild fever Saturday night. Got monoclonal antibodies 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock. It had ones in it. On the Sunday. Then I was fine for the rest of the day. Had a hardcore fever for about 4 hours that night. And by 1 a.m. I woke up. I was like, okay. Like nothing, like I would never,
Yeah.
I was never sick. I was still positive, but 100% symptomless from a couple of hours of a fever, merely like 10 hours after the treatment. And then 3 to 4 days later, negative.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh. And the funny thing was then all of a sudden my family who were in Australia were like, they haven't asked me about being vaccinated since.
Right.
They only ask it because my sister's getting married this year and they're like, well, get vaccinated so you can come to Australia. I'm like,
Right.
why?
Yeah.
I'm like, if I look at the risk to reward ratio, I know I can survive COVID. Stacy survives it. Sienna, we're pretty sure, had it too. So COVID's not a risk to us.
Right.
It's also doesn't stop the spread, so it's irrelevant for that thing. But the shot, while it's still a very small number, could produce a side effect.
Sure.
And it's very small.
Just like every other.
Yeah. But I know that COVID doesn't for me and my family. So I said to them,
thing is, with all the other ones, you weigh the benefit versus the liability. In other cases where the benefit is far greater than the risk of side effects, then you go with it, you know?
Yeah.
But you're given the choice.
Yeah.
You know?
And so that's what I was trying to say to them, because Dad's like, oh, everything's about sacrifices though, Blake. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sacrificing maybe not seeing my sister get married because I don't know, like, I can live 100%. I'll still go on without being at the wedding, which sucks. It still does suck. But if something happened to one of the three of us, I'd never live let down.
Right.
Because
that's forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was trying to explain to them, because they're like on the boosters, they're all on the whole thing, which is fine.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that. But I'm not going to do it just so I can enter a country.
Yeah.
When I'm like, give another 6 months, it'll be fine.
What's funny is dictating your own narrative when it comes to that's also a hot button for a lot of people. And, you know, coming from a medical background, it's really not a hot button for me, you know, because what I observe is there's this group of people all the way that are fanatical in one direction.
Yeah.
That are telling you that it should be mandatory because it's like humanity's saving grace.
They really did make it like just short of Jesus.
They really did. And that's what bothers me. And then you've got the other group that is fanatical in the opposite direction, that basically are saying that you know that it's going to kill everybody, and
it's population control.
And it's like let's look at it realistically speaking, right? Is it a vaccination? Vaccinations are designed to be beneficial, not panacea, right? Like they're not a cure-all, they're not a salvation. Are they beneficial? Yeah, they're okay. Is there possible side effects that are most likely survivable? Yeah, there is. Like, it's right in the middle. It's like, you know, but it all falls down to, at least in my opinion, I don't care whether you think that it works or it doesn't work or whatever. You just have the choice to get it or not. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, that's all. Like, and the thing is, people are creating their own narrative. They don't want to get it, so they search for all of this pseudo evidence that's like, it, you know, I'm not getting it because I'm going to grow a third eye or whatever. Like, it's, you know, it's, you don't have to convince me, because
I could be quite beneficial.
It would be. Yeah, I think. Depending on where it is. I mean, let's be honest.
Where would you put it if you could choose?
Well, I don't.
Back of your head? I do back of my head.
Would you?
Yeah, well, no one can sneak up on me then.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be fucked because you wear a hat.
Exactly.
So you'd be blind.
It wouldn't work for me.
Yeah. Maybe back of your neck.
So, but it's like, you don't got to create reasons to not get it. Just say you don't want it. That's all.
So
that's
fun,
good enough.
though, Bill. It's so
that's
fun.
good enough.
It's so fun.
There's way more interesting things to talk about. You
There
know
is.
what I mean?
There's
way more interesting things to talk
about. We say that while we're still talking about COVID.
That's true. Like, we're still talking about it.
It's hopefully, I mean, look, we've got the war to talk about now.
The water?
The war.
Oh, the war.
Yeah.
I thought you said the water.
The war to talk about.
And I'm like, we did that already.
It is good. It's fantastic. Yeah. That Putin thing is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I followed it very closely for a while. And we have a mutual, you know, friend that's, you know, from there.
It's all very weird.
You know, it is.
I love how they're trying to paint that Putin's an idiot. Like, do you really think a guy that has kept office in a country that's huge and a superpower,
right,
for 22 years is an idiot?
Yeah.
Like,
no.
Anyone who believes like, oh, he sent all these people and he just underestimated, probably was just bad intel. But also, like,
that doesn't make him an idiot. That makes it.
This is the first time we've ever seen the start of an invasion. Happen. Like, we've never seen it.
Yeah, we have.
We haven't seen it with like everyone having phones and everything. Like, we haven't seen like when America went to Iraq and Afghanistan. We haven't seen that. We've seen what they deemed to show us, but we haven't seen like people holding up their iPhones and seeing a fighter jet shoot into a building and
it's
stuff.
definitely much more in your home now than, but I mean that's what they said when Desert Storm happened, because that was the first time that we had 24-hour media covering it, so it was on all the time,
What was Desert Storm?
That was when Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Okay. When was that?
1990 and 91.
Gotcha.
So.
It's tricky when it's not like everywhere. There's obviously some sort of narrative happening in the background, but we don't know what it is, and I don't even like to speculate. I mean, I like to speculate. Let me first
say,
it's
really?
It's
you
very
don't
fun.
like to.
I don't speculate with.
This is what I do in my spare time.
Literally my car ride.
What do you do? Skateboarding? Nah, I used to do that. Now I just speculate.
Yeah. Now I try and figure out the deep state. The thing is, I love when people know the answer. This is what's happening.
This is what it is. This is what they should do. It's the same people that have the opinions on what a football team should do.
Oh yeah,
in order to win. And
Monday quarterbacking.
Yeah, why don't they call me? I know the answer. This guy's only been doing it for 50 years.
Yeah, what does he know? Well, I saw the latest conspiracy theory that I love is related to Will Smith and the Chris Rock slap.
Oh my God.
I got one yesterday, and it's a really good friend of mine. I really enjoy them. I'm not even saying male or female, just keep him fully anonymous. But it was... So, Pfizer sponsored the Oscars. Mm-hmm. They're about to come out with an alopecia drug. Do you need any more proof? I was like, okay, whatever, but it doesn't matter like it does with the COVID one, which it affected everyone. Like what, they're going to automatically tell everyone you have to take alopecia pills?
I think as far as speaking on that incident, any interesting bit of news in the last few years has just utterly polarized the population. Like
it is weird that people are
used to be
taking Will Smith's side though.
And that's the thing.
That's very strange.
And those people are, and I'm going to be totally opinionated here, but I'm going to be polarized, right? Like those people they're validating, like they're claiming their intelligence when it's actually their emotion that is causing them to side with him. They're saying that they're taking his side, that he was in the right. Well, A, no, because it's illegal to do what he did, and B, if you stop and think about it, he chose violence as a reaction to somebody who, in his opinion, was just doing their job poorly, right? So, like,
well, but so apparently Jada Smith had already said publicly about her alopecia. All you can do is laugh about it,
right?
But
exactly.
Apparently you can't,
right?
So. Like, it's so... I think the majority are not with Will Smith because apparently the Oscars are starting to... They've got a massive meeting right now because of this huge backlash. Like, how you didn't think there was going to be backlash is beyond me. Like,
immediately.
I mean, one good thing, though, is it's finally a controversial thing that brought so many good memes.
Oh, God.
I found out about it from memes, and I'm like, what happened last night?
You're like, what? I got to look it up.
Will Smith slapped
Thankfully,
Chris
we have
Ross?
Google here.
Yeah, that is very fortunate. And I didn't use it. I used YouTube. But within the first 10 hours of Sky News posting just the 1 minute 10 clip, they had 34 million views.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, you know what? That's kind of something that I'm glad it happened because it wasn't war related. It wasn't health related. It was like, all right, just a dude slapping another dude.
Yeah.
And the memes have been fucking incredible.
Oh, you saw mine this week?
Yes.
Did you see it?
I think so. I don't know. There's so many though. Like I had one person, it was my favorite one so far was two actually. Someone tweeted going, good on Will for standing up for someone else's woman like that.
That is a good one.
And the other one was, it was like a cartoon style thing. It cuts between like frames from it, and it's Chris Rock makes the joke. Will Smith laughs, and then Jada turns to him. She goes, "Do you want me to get into another entanglement?"
I saw that one too.
And then cuts to Will slapping him, and he's turning to Jada, going, "Is that okay?
Is
now?"
that okay? You know what's funny though? So, especially like you're talking about the people that take Will Smith's side on this whole thing. It's like Will Smith was sitting front row at essentially a comedy show, right?
But he's not used to getting roasted.
It
Like,
doesn't.
if you're famous, you're gonna get roasted.
But here's the thing: like, do you know who Gallagher is? No,
Maybe.
famous comedian from the '80s that used to smash the watermelons.
No, but that sounds awesome.
He was a really good comedian. He did other stuff too, but that's what he was famous for, right? Like at one point, he would in every act, his gimmick was he would come out with this giant sledgehammer and smash a watermelon, and the entire front row would get covered in watermelon
At the
bits.
Oscars?
I don't think he ever hosted the Oscars.
That'd be fantastic.
But here's the thing, right?
Ruining
Like if you go, that's like going to a Gallagher show and then getting up on stage and smacking him because you got watermelon on you. You know, you're in the front row. You're fair game.
It was funny. The part that was weird though was it was just his speech after, like somehow trying to say how he's protecting his family. Then you had
that speech was such self-promotion.
Oh yeah.
It was such self-promotion. He wasn't apologetic at all because the whole thing was like he was correlating, he was justifying his actions from 40 minutes earlier by saying this is what the character that I just won this Oscar for would do
just
too.
acting.
It's like, you know, you don't get to escalate non-violence with violence and then be applauded as a superhero.
No.
You know.
Did you see though? So Chris Rock, there's a moment where he's about to say something back because Will Smith goes, keep my wife's name out of your mouth, and you see Chris Rock go, yeah, okay. It's like, you know, he was gonna have a banger. Like that's the best part about the whole thing. Like if it was someone else other than Will Smith with their history, no one, it would have been like, all right, that's kind of fun. If one, she's famous and she chooses to be famous, wants to be like, so you're going to get roasted. Two, the entanglement history. And now you're standing up for the woman who didn't give a fuck about cheating. Like no remorse, no remorse. Like, now you're standing up against her. It made him look weaker than anything else. It didn't make him look strong. It didn't make him
It made her look weak too.
It made her look weak, but I think it also made her look more evil. Because everyone's just like, oh, she pulls the strings.
Especially since he laughed first.
Yeah.
Especially since he laughed first.
Yeah, that cut to him really fucked the whole thing. Because you just see him laugh, her cringe, then all of a sudden he's walking up to slap.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a wild.
See, I saw a couple of better memes on.
You saying mine weren't good?
No, they were good, but some of them that were a little. I don't want to say better. I'll say worse. In fact, one of them was if he's this mad in March, imagine how mad he'd be in August, or something like that.
That's so good. That's what I mean. There's so many. I that has to be the biggest.
That's why Chris Rock was like, his response was like, I was being nice.
Yeah.
I could have said a lot worse stuff than G.I. Jane. I mean, you know.
But also, the whole thing is amazing for a comedian. The guy's last name is Rock. You know, like there's a comedian, Andrew Schultz. The next day, he came out with a 2.5 minute roast. And it is so on point. He's like, it's layer upon layer. Like, for example, one of his ones was Will Smith went back to Philadelphia while his wife looks like she's from the movie. And then he's like, and he said something about everyone was like, oh, he's intoxicated. And then like one of his other ones was everyone's saying that Will was intoxicated, but he doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He has, that's the only time he's ever smoked rock.
What was there was another one that I saw. Remember, it was remember the opening to The Fresh Prince?
I saw
the mom right? If they're laughing, then you don't need them because they're not good friends. No. And it was just a picture. It was a static picture of the mom, with the finger out, and it was like, if they were, what is it? If they're laughing, you can hit them because your wife's got no hair or something like that.
Well, because there was a guy that did a TikTok, and it was something like he did the intro for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but changed it. He goes, because my wife's got no hair. And it's fantastic. It was the whole intro. I was like, this guy nailed it.
But can you imagine, honestly, like the amount of negative, like there's people that are pro, Will Smith and that are kind of siding with him.
I think it's a very small group, though.
It is, but they're there. And then there's a ton of backlash against him right now. Whereas had he just done nothing,
even if he slapped him in the back room,
but
and people go like,
that's what I'm saying. Like if had he just done nothing, nobody be talking about it. No. Nobody would even remember the joke.
And Pfizer wouldn't be selling alopecia pills.
Exactly.
They'd be really in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I just couldn't.
I'm actually amazed at how many people I know that I would not have expected to side with Will Smith on this.
It's weird.
And every single reason that they give is all emotion.
What are some of the reasons?
Well, he was standing up for his wife. Well, okay, his wife wasn't in any danger.
But she's famous. Yeah. Like, if she was someone who was, I don't want to be famous. I'm married to a super famous guy, but I just don't want the light.
Right.
Kind of maybe, but still not an excuse to hit someone.
Yeah.
But definitely a reason to be like, fuck you.
Well, but it's
she wants that smoke.
But that's the thing. He wasn't rallying against Jada. He was doing a comedy routine. I'm not even a big Chris Rock fan.
It wasn't even that hard of a joke. She has a shaved head. She's had a shaved head for years.
That's what I'm saying. And that's my whole point is that, like, these people are like, oh my gosh, if somebody said that about my wife, well, okay, if a comedian said it about your wife at a comedy show, that's a different scenario than some dude at a bar.
Her judging.
And even then,
I feel like
it's still illegal to hit the guy. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But it's not even that bad of a joke. That's the whole point.
No, I mean it wasn't a funny joke.
There's so many more jokes he could have done.
Oh God,
you like that?
He definitely protected him.
Yeah,
he definitely protected him with that throwaway. I mean, it was a throwaway. It was not meant to have a reaction at all. Like not even necessarily a laugh.
But also, Chris Rock's meant to be his friend. Like he's known Chris Rock for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so weird all across all areas, which, again, out of it, I got a lot of entertainment for the last 24 hours.
Right.
I got so much. Like, my whole feed of stories when I'm sharing stuff has been either that or Carl Dunnigan, which I got you onto.
Yep.
He's fantastic. You got to watch more Carl Dunnigan.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I definitely will.
His Biden and Trump face swaps are fantastic. He has one, I think I showed you yesterday, the trans Trump.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, just the way in which his mind works, I'm like, how? And he's one of those comedians where it's like, you're so fucking funny but you just don't get the recognition you deserve. The only reason I know about him is because he's very close friends with Rogan. Right. And Rogan shared one of these things he did, which was like a Biden face swap. And I was like, check this out.
And that's the thing. Like, if you ever watched Rogan's comedy, like, he's not that funny. I never thought he was that funny. I mean, I think he's great at what he does now.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan. That's why I said to Stace, I'm like, I'm a massive Rogan fanboy, but I wouldn't be in a rush to watch his comedy because it's not my style.
Right.
Which is great. That's the cool thing about comedy.
Yeah. And what's funny is one of the reasons why I wasn't a big fan of his comedy is his voice. It didn't really lend itself to comedy, but it lends itself to commentary easily.
Oh, definitely. I think it's his reactions though, like the whoa. It's just everywhere.
Well, he used to host that show Fear Factor. Remember that?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, he did a good job on there.
He said that he was just stoned the whole time.
Oh, Fear Factor.
He goes, there was probably 2 episodes that he was sober.
Really?
Yeah, he goes, he would have gummies, THC lollipops.
Really?
Yeah, and he goes, sometimes he'd have like the THC lollipops. He goes, they were Russian roulette, where he could have one, feel nothing. One, a different day, and he's talking to aliens.
Right.
So there was one episode where he was talking about, he went through, they were going down into the ocean for some Fear Factor one. And he had no idea because he's fucking stoned out of his mind. And he's talking to aliens in his head. And they're like, hey, Joe, yeah? You know where we are? He's, yeah, sure. And he's like, we're in the ocean. He's like, oh my God. And so he's there sitting in the ocean, underwater, speaking to aliens, about to get onto Fear Factor to commentate. He's such a funny influence because like, he's the reason I'm like considering, I'm like, I want to try mushrooms. I'm like, because
Joe said it was all right.
It just sounds interesting. Yeah. I want to explore the like realms of my mind. But yeah, I really wish they make mushrooms legal. Have you seen the Delta 8 THC? That's an interesting one. How it's grayishly legal but not illegal.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to. We have a colleague, a mutual friend that that's her business, and started off doing the CBD stuff, and then I guess. Once, I mean, she's an authority on this stuff. Obviously, you know, she goes through all the legal things that you have to go through and everything. And when she started incorporating that Delta 8, which I am so far out of, like, I don't know what this stuff is and what it does. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't that guy, you know? So, I mean, I tried the CBD stuff, you know, for different things, and it had some, you know, it definitely, you know, helped here and there and stuff. So, you know, great. You know, and then when she started offering the Delta 8 stuff in conjunction with a lot of the other stuff that she offers, you know, she would always remind people, this is the stuff that will get you high.
You will be smacked.
You know, and I'm like, why do I want that? Like, you know, like, because I was never the guy that went and got high all the time. You know what I mean? But then you talk to other people that use it, and she primarily promotes, like, she's not the buy CBD just because it's CBD and people say it does stuff. Like, she focuses on primarily like help with like sleep issues and stuff. And and I've had
cannabinoid stuff's super interesting. Yeah. Like from CB, I think it starts at CBA and goes up to like CBF or something wild.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like I thought it was just CBD was what it was, but like no, there's CBB, CBC, all the different cannabinoids that affect your body in a different way.
Right.
And it sucks because it's like, I wanted to have her on to talk, but she's like, dude, legalities are so fucked. And I'm like, but you can talk about it, but not suggest it, can't you?
Well, so and that's the thing. I don't know what the legalities are, but we're talking about it, and I'm not.
I think because we're not worried about
it, right? But as long as she doesn't say that she's, you can buy this stuff. Come on down. You know what I mean? Like, she can't. She can't do that. But
the stuff that interests me though, with all those, like THC, brownies, mushrooms, it's not like, I've never associated any drug with escapism ever. And like, I noticed that because I was aware of the emotional connection being stronger than anything else. So it started, like, I noticed this when I was young, 19 years old, even with alcohol. My girlfriend at the time broke up with me. I was devastated, and all my friends like, let's just go get fucked up and forget about it. At 19, I was like, no, I'm not using alcohol as a numbing device. I'm just going to stay home and fucking just do whatever, process through it. Looking back at that now, like after reading the book, shit, it's not the name of the book.
Good, because I was going to look it up.
It's Google shit, see what comes up. It's a book to do with like addiction, and it's talking about mostly technology, but they also go into also illicit drugs such as heroin.
Right.
And they go, the biggest thing is behavioral habits. That is the biggest addiction that anything is.
Absolutely.
So that's why the phone, when you wake up in the morning, you read your phone. It's a habit addiction, and that's what plagues us, keep us in there the whole time. It's the same thing works with illicit drugs, that like everyone's like, oh, once you take this drug, you're hooked for life. Even heroin's not like that. Where if you took someone out from, like, you get them clean, and then you change their entire environment. So they're not in the house that they're doing the drugs, that they were doing the drugs. They're not with the friends that they used to do the drugs with.
Right.
They tested that during where is it? They tested it during the Nixon era, during Vietnam.
Okay.
And so at the time, relapse rates was 95%.
Wow.
If you go to rehab, come back out, only 5%.
Back into your old life.
They would put you back in your old life. And then that was proof of how addictive heroin is. Then in Vietnam, obviously Vietnam was known, a lot of the soldiers were taking heroin.
Right.
Because there was nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they came back, went to rehab, came back out, and they had a relapse rate of 5%. So from 95% down to 5%. Huge difference. Mm-hmm. So big that no one believed it. They just thought they fudged the numbers. But then when they looked into it further, and they still haven't done this, unfortunately, because you solved the problem too quickly, I think. Their emotional connection and habitual connection to heroin was jungle, war, the soldiers as well, their comrades there. Whereas when they left, came back to America, not the same people. It was back with their family.
Right.
No jungle.
Right.
And
a much more positive environment.
And also not as easy to get. They didn't know anyone where to get it.
Right.
So once they got off it, only 5% went back to it because of those factors. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with even like why I'm interested in mushrooms and all that sort of stuff. One, I have a healthy fear about them, which I think you need. Even alcohol, I've got this like fear about it, which I kind of hold on to deliberately. I never want to get blasé about it, but I still have the curiosity. Like that was like, I mean, I've tried cocaine in my early 20s. But the thing, do you know the thing that actually got me to do it? Because I was terrified of a drug. The thing that got me to do it was a guy that I knew who was the same as me, never will touch drugs. He was studying medicine, and then all of a sudden he's coked off his head. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? And like, the difference was like, I mean, he kind of went, he made an emotional connection to it long term, which was dangerous.
Sure.
But he never got it. I think he's fine operational, but he did it too much. But he explained it to me. He goes, cocaine's the only one that you can kind of have a little bit, see how it hits you, stop, and continue. And I was like, that's interesting. He goes, whereas you have other drugs and it's like they hit you, you're whacked, and like, you know, anything can happen. So in my early 20s, I was like, oh, I'm going to try it. But I always had this fear, while like a dance between the fear and the enjoyment of it, where I never went to it to escape. It was just like, oh, it's available. Cool. And then I'm like, I mean, you know how hyper I am? Oh my God.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
I would run around just like...
But, you know, a lot of people use it to escape, which they're like, the problem is not the drugs at that point. There's other things going on, you know? There's people that do it, I mean, recreationally because... You know, they like the way that it feels, you know, that's a different emotional, like you said, emotional connection to it and stuff. And, I mean, there are other people that utilize it to regulate their, you know, like, there are people that have started themselves on a cycle, right? They need these uppers to wake them up in the morning so that they can function properly. And then because they're on uppers, they can't come down. So they take the downers to get, you know what I mean? And then they're just on that cycle. Yeah. You know?
And see, that's
not
dangerous.
Escaping. If anything, that's the opposite. That's taking drugs to keep you in your environment.
Well, isn't it funny how you could, like, someone could tell anyone that. They go, oh man, I have this when I wake up and then I can't get to sleep, so I have this. People go, oh, that's not that good. Whereas you go, yeah, I do cocaine once every 2-3 months.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You know? And I'm like, you know that health-wise, that's the better option.
I mean,
tell you.
I'm not going to advocate
Don't
cocaine
advocate
use,
it.
but...
That's my words, not yours. But I used to say that with my parents. Because I'm like, yeah, I do it now and then.
Yeah.
And it'd be tears. I'm like, look, you don't know it. I get that. So it's coming from fear, it's coming from this. But I'd say to them, like, if I told you I had 3 or 4 glasses of alcohol every 2 days, consistently, you'd be like, okay. But I'm like, if I did 1 line a week, you'd be terrified. And I go, that is so minute. Like, I mean, like, just one little dip. It wasn't.
again, I'm not going to advocate cocaine use.
This is
but,
I'm speaking out of my words.
But yeah, I mean, and that, like, people don't realize, you can, like, you're going to judge somebody that does that and then go and make sure you have your coffee in the morning so you can function, and then have your beer at night so you can relax. And it's every single, like, that's the problem, is if you can't function without it, then it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We should always use ourselves in a way like our own little science experiment. So, like, even with meat, I'm eating more red meat at the moment, seeing how I feel. I feel great when I do it. At the moment, it seems like once every day, or at least once every second day, having red meat. But I noticed when I was having, like, even for 3 days, I was having a steak for lunch and dinner. Only 2-3 days. And I felt good, but there was something a little bit off where I was like, oh, I just feel a little bit funny. So I was like, all right, pull it back a bit. I've always been like that with everything. So,
and you're objective about it. Like, you're not anticipating an answer. You just want to see what it is.
Yeah. Well, you have to always ask. I always ask myself, how do I actually feel? Not, oh, this is how it is. How do I actually feel?
Right.
And it's the same with even caffeine. Like, this is why when I go, I would love to try mushrooms because it's very interesting. I also have this thing with caffeine where I have a rule. If I ever have more than one in a day, a caffeinated drink, I have to go 3 weeks no caffeine.
Wow.
Like, it's like this hard line I have.
Wow.
And so that regulates me. And watch, if I have 2 in a day, 3 weeks, 0. And that then completely resets my baseline. And now I don't even want it. I'm like, all right, I'll have 1 every couple of days. And obviously it creeps back in.
Sure.
But I have that
Just
line
like
in the
everything.
sand. Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who just decided, because somebody explained to her how powerful it was and or how significant the difference was, and she literally just wanted to try it. Like, she had no expectations. She didn't go into it saying, okay, this person said it was going to be great, it's going to be awesome. It wasn't that. And so, like, she literally was as objective as you can be. And she said, I just picked a month and I went without alcohol or red meat, or meat at all. She and it wasn't it wasn't like a moral stance that she was taking. It wasn't even a health stance that she was taking. It wasn't, she wasn't taking a stance at all. She was, like you said, she was experimenting, and she was like, okay, well, they said it's awesome. I mean, I like steak. I like wine, but I can go a month without and see what the difference is. And then, so at the end of the month, she said that she felt so good. And that's the only change that she made. So she had to attribute it to that. She said she
made a lot of changes in 1 month, though.
She did. Well, 2 changes, but they're significant changes. She gave up meat and alcohol, which are, of course, the 2 things that, you give up first in any,
It'd be interesting if she just did, because I've had this conversation with Stacey about veganism, because the problem I've got with a lot of vegan studies is that they compare the standard American diet with a vegan diet. I mean, you're comparing a shit diet with a decent quality diet.
You can have a good diet and not be vegan.
Yeah. And that's what I said. I'm like, there's very few studies that compare a vegan diet with a healthy non-vegan diet.
Right?
They don't really exist.
They don't do that. Yeah.
So, and because I go to, again, I'm all about trying to find out as much information as I can. Morals, ethics, cool. That you can't argue. Health, you can argue, because it's so broad. Like, I tried vegan for a while when we first started dating. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. For me, my body didn't feel great.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, and
that's what I hear normally. That's why I brought the story up, because at the end of the month, her attitude was, while I love a good steak and I love a glass of wine, I love feeling like this more than that.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, and I haven't done that, but if I were to do that exact same experiment, my hypothesis would be I would probably feel better at the end of the month than I did at the beginning of the month, right? I don't know that I would feel so good. I don't think that it would be as significant of a difference. Like I wouldn't say I prefer feeling like this over giving up meat and alcohol. You know what I mean? And the thing is, like, I don't eat a ton of meat and I don't drink a ton of alcohol. Like I'm not like, I have a fairly well balanced, you know what I mean? Like I'm everything in moderation, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have a steak every night. I treat myself to a steak once every couple of weeks, you know?
Yeah.
We have a lot of social engagements recently. And, you know, I've had a couple of drinks here or there, but it's never more than 2. That's my hard line, is never more than 2. If I have any at all, you know? So I'm not like, and even that, like, we just have happened to have had several social engagements come up back to back to back. But normally I have 1, maybe 2 drinks, 1, maybe twice a week, you know, so it's not much.
Because the way my brain works is always analytic, like compound interest. So the way I think, because I mean, used to me, I never drink at an event.
Right.
Because I'm like, I feel like me not drinking is always a conversation starter. People are like, you don't drink? I'm like, yeah. But outside of that, I'm like, all right, say I go to one event.
It's not that you don't drink, right? You just don't drink at those events.
I don't drink alcohol at all.
At all?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think since I've been with Stace, and it was even before that, I probably have had less than 10 alcoholic drinks in 3.5 years.
Wow.
Because it's like that thing where I just say that's just how it is. That's the biggest thing for me. I should not say that, like, that's just how it is.
It's not a moral stance. It's not a financial stance. Not even a health stance. It's just I just don't do that, right?
But the way it couples in my head is, all right, say I go to one event once a week for an entire year, and I have 2 drinks. Say, what, $10 a drink? So that's, $1,000 a year? I'm like, cool, saved $1,000. But also now I haven't drunk 100 drinks of alcohol. Because it's all those little, it's like saving $2 here and there builds up. That's how my brain works. I'm like, so at the end of 3 years, even if I just went out once a week, that's 300 to 400 drinks I haven't had that acts as a positive interest rate for my health, but also a positive interest rate for my money.
Your finances, right?
Because now, because I always just get water. And sure, if I feel like having something that, like, there has been moments where I have had a rum when I was at the Off the Hook comedy store. But I remember I had one, I was like,
That's where you go to buy comedy. At the comedy store.
It's great. But I remember having it, and because I hadn't had it for so long, I was like, it's not as good as I remember.
Right.
And
it's so disappointing.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to be naughty. And I'm like, don't enjoy this.
Me having a military background, of course, I'm chock full of stories, right? And I remember this time this was probably more influential on me than I make it out to be. But I was on active duty, and I lived in the barracks. I had a roommate, and somebody in our unit that lived off base was having this huge party, and and this was when, like, right when I was in my, like, when I was 20 or 21, you know, like, it was like right when you're gonna be the worst. You know what I mean? And my roommate, same age, you know, and like that we had built up this party all week, and we were so excited for it, and like we would just talk about it all the time. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna get so drunk. Like, this was like our plan. Like, we can't wait. We got to get this. We got to get this. We got to get this. Stockpile it. Like, we're going to get hammered. It's going to be awesome. Right.
That's never the start to a good party.
Right. But the thing is, it's a very, like, 20-year-old mentality, right? Like, I've seen people since then that have had the same mentality, but I'll never forget, like, all week long, we did it. And then when we got there, it was like a contest. Like, it was like we were trying to win a prize by how much alcohol we could consume in a finite amount of time.
That is such a 20-year-old thing.
It really is. And the thing is, we consumed a ton of alcohol. And of course, we weren't driving back to base. We had somebody driving us. Both of us were in the back seat, and this part surprisingly clear in my memory because it was very heavily washed out with alcohol. But I remember both of us laying down. Like one of us was laying on the floor of the back seat, and one of us was laying across the back seat, feeling like crap, like we had just thrown up 5 times each, and like knowing full well that the next day was going to be even worse. But we felt terrible. The whole place was spinning. Like it was just a horrible, horrible feeling. And one of us reminded the other one, and I can't remember who it was, but I remember this revelation. It was, we did this on purpose. This is mission accomplished. Like this is what we were looking forward to. And then the other one was like, what were we thinking? Why would we do this to ourselves?
Hindsight is a bitch.
And it was so funny because I'm like, how many? Because like I said, it was really influential to me because I really haven't been hammered since that day. I really don't. Like I have 1 or 2 I'll treat myself to a drink, and I'm more of like I like a nice, well done cocktail. Like I can sip it and enjoy it, and like I don't drink to get drunk. I don't even drink to get buzzed. I just drink it because I like the flavor. But literally since that day, and this is several decades ago, I really haven't. It was obviously much more influential on me than I probably make it out to be. But
yeah, we are lucky that.
How many people don't have that revelation?
You had a revelation with someone. I just finished reading, either it was Contagious or it's Outliers, and they talk about, they did all these studies at colleges where they'd ask a lot of people about, do you enjoy getting drunk? And the vast majority of them actually said no.
No.
The problem is, so they did these studies, found out the majority of these students don't enjoy getting drunk and they would prefer not to. But it didn't seem, nothing changed. They'd still get drunk. They'd still have problems. They'd, be passing out. And they realized that it was because everyone thought the other person enjoyed it. So that social ignorance, but combined with a social pressure, ended up making these, it's like the classic thing of you got 2 people who don't want to get drunk, who think the other person wants to. By pressure, they
don't want to be right.
Yeah, versus both just going, I don't want to get drunk. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
But that conversation never seems to happen on scale in the in those colleges,
right.
And it happens also outside of that.
Sure,
because they assume that the other person wants to get drunk.
Right,
and
that's how I feel about. I mean.
I've been lucky that I'm pretty selfish. I'm like, no, I'm not getting fucking drunk.
I feel that that's why beer is so popular, because to me, beer is disgusting. Like beer tastes terrible.
It feels like you've drunk a fuzzy watermelon and it's sitting in your stomach.
That's the thing. Like there's nothing good about at least, and this is of course just my opinion, but I remember trying so hard for exactly the reason you just said, trying so hard throughout my young adult life, trying to like beer because everybody else was drinking it, and I felt that I had to. Yeah. And I'm wondering, as I'm older now, I feel my voice getting up there. So watch the. I'm wondering how many other people feel the same way and just aren't willing to say something, right? Like you get a whole party full of people drinking beer. It's like, how many of you guys actually like what you're drinking?
Well, social pressure is massive, because I remember when I was younger and my parents were starting to get into wine. And I remember going, I just don't like it. They go, well, you need to acquire a taste. I'm like, what the fuck advice is that?
Why?
Oh, you don't like something? Well, you have to have it until you do.
Right.
That sounds like an alcoholic. And I'm not saying they're alcoholics, but it was just it was that one sentence that my mom said where I'm like, let's just evaluate that rationality. You don't like this, but have it until you do.
Keep digging, and then you can stop having it.
Yeah, that's how it works. It was this whole thing of, well, you need to do this to be social. I'm like, but fuck that. Yeah. I can be social on my own merits, not on, okay, if I do this, I can, definitely you need to have similarities. Of course.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be what you think it needs to be.
Yeah.
Again, I went last night. I didn't drink a single drink. Didn't stop me from talking to anyone.
No.
No. It definitely didn't change anything.
That calls back to, I keep mentioning, the polarization of the culture and the popularity and stuff. And I mean, it was such a big trend, politically speaking, when you somebody that supports a certain political party, right? If you don't support that political party, you unfriend them on social media. And I'm like, was that why you were friends to begin with? Because if that's the case, then I totally get it, right? Like if you voted a certain way and I said, hey, we should be friends because you voted this way.
Yeah.
And then that's the only thing that our relationship was based on. And then 4 years later, you vote a different way and I unfriend you. That's completely reasonable to me. Yeah. I guess the way I explained it.
People need to
that's
learn
not why you're friends to begin with, you know?
People need to learn how to fight. I think that will help. Like physically learn how to fight. Because I know I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it.
All right.
There's a weird thing that happens when I learned how to fight in the last 3 or 4 years in terms of confidence that I didn't feel like I needed to verbally fight anymore. So, like definitely COVID kind of broke that for a little bit where I was screaming into the abyss about fuck you and mandating this vaccine. That was the one thing. I also hate people that are hypocritic in their nature.
Of course.
Well, I don't hate them. I hate the action. And if I see it myself, I'm like, fuck, pull it up. Right. And I've found a couple in the last few years, and I turned to Stacey, I'm like, shit. She's like, yeah, we're going to fix that. I'm like, okay.
But at least you recognize, as soon as you recognize it, you attempt to stop it.
Well, it was that confidence of like, you know what? I am going to learn more from being wrong than being right.
Absolutely.
And
nobody ever learned anything from being right.
Ever. So there's that freedom for sure. But what happened in conversation once I learned how to fight was I wasn't insecure anymore. If someone said something, not even mean, like I used to be fucking insecure where like, oh, like they're saying this or imagining they're talking about me. All that went away as soon as I could throw hands. But I never threw hands. Like I never threw, like just because I learned it.
I knew that I could. That's all.
But and it's funny,
All
like
right, Will.
Hey, Will didn't know how to stop. But
thankfully, he throws hands in a very manly way.
Well, that was another thing that Schultz said. He goes, Will Smith's hand was symbolic of his relationship. Open, but he wished it was closed.
That was a good one.
That's so good, right?
That was a good one.
But yeah, learn how to fight is the thing I'm going to end the podcast with.
End the podcast with, all right, everybody, let's learn how to fight.
I've just
so that you don't have to. You sound like Mr. Miyagi, you know? That was one of the lessons in the Karate Kid.
Well, clean a fucking car and you learn how to do karate? Yeah. Come on, mate.
Yeah.
Come on.
Is that not a thing?
He was just a lazy fuck who needed a car clean for free. Idle my ass. Anyway, so where can people find you, Bill?
They can find me. I always recommend people look for me on social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, because I always post my. You can see my professional, stuff done. But as you know, and a lot of people know, I do take time out of my day to do like funny memes that incorporate what I do, but in a funny way. And
well, you have content from this though too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shit.
Absolutely. So you can certainly find me on Facebook and Instagram, and you can probably put my contact.
It'll be in the description. For people listen. There's descriptions in Spotify and everything else. So social media is the best. Facebook and
because social media's got all my other stuff too. My phone number 239-940-4268 is my cell, so you can text me. I've got a couple of different emails that I use because of the business that I run, but
you have a lot of emails.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I thought I had a lot, and you beat me.
I have lots.
I
do. Do you really?
That is accumulated over the years.
But I mean, like you get all these accounts that just automatically give you an email address that you're never gonna use. So. I mean, how many out of the 7 do you actively check?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I have more emails than you, but I actively check fewer.
One is like one from way back, and that was like, it's like on my emails, so all my bidding stuff comes through there. I've got a bunch of other shit. Then it's my old personal training one, and I signed up to a bunch of shit, and my accountant from Australia still emails me on that one sometimes. Then I have another one for the podcast now. Then I had one that was a temporary Gmail for my current business, Sky Media House. And then when I transitioned and got the Blake at skymediahouse.com, people still are emailing that old one. So I'm like, fuck, okay, just juggle that
You
one.
could just probably put a thing in there where you can forward it.
I'll look into that. Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you very much.
Has it been 2 hours?
It's been an hour and 55. But time I got to set up for the next one now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because we started late, but that's all right.
Yeah. We're figuring stuff out.
Yeah. We got a lot of shit done today.
I feel like, I need to pee now, so it's perfect timing, dude. This liquid death is killing my bladder right now.
You actually gave me the advice to pee before we started, too, which was good advice. And
yeah, could you imagine if we didn't? We'd be just here, just like face blue.
I would have said, can we pause this?
I probably would have, because I mean, my bladder, I'm like, Stacey has a real problem with my bladder. She's like, you just can't hold it. I'm like, 45 minutes is holding a bitch.
Right.
I call my wife that, and she knows I'm just joking, guys, and not demeaning her. Plus, she calls me mate and a dick sometimes, so it's fair.
True. And she went out of her way this morning.
She is a fantastic wife
to get us going.
Yeah,
so.
We wouldn't have these headphones on.
No.
All right, cool, man. Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone. Make sure to subscribe.
See you later.
And hit the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, out of the vortex.
Oh, see, it was really hurting.